Thanks for all your hard work. I want to say a few remarks. The first I want to start with, how many legislators does it take to pass a bill? Now, if you look at the Constitution, you look at a textbook, you even look at our own rules, most people will tell you it takes a majority. But I think that only tells part of the story. Technically, it's correct. I think what matters far, far more isn't the number of legislators, it's the type. And if you want to ask me, over the course of my career here, there's generally three types of legislators. The first are tinkerers. They work hard, but they want to stay within the lines. They really, really want to do the right thing, right up into the point that it does not upset the status quo. The second are complainers. They sit on the sidelines and they grumble. They grumble publicly, they grumble privately, they talk about how the process is all broken, and they never really realize what's at issue is that they're critics, they're not creators. And the final category are reformers. Ask any single reformer, how many legislators does it take to pass a bill? And they'll tell you in a second, it takes one. It takes one single legislator. One legislator willing to have the courage to take on the status quo, upset the apple cart. One legislator willing to get into the fight, ignore the easy path, and take the road less traveled. And I know you know that, because I look out here and I see a whole room filled, a chamber filled with reformers. And I'm not just saying that to make you feel good. Look what you accomplished last year. Your record speaks for itself. Your blood, sweat, and tears you poured into session produced unprecedented results. We didn't just go crashing against the status quo. Like Joshua in Jericho, we brought the walls crashing down. And here's the deal. Long before there was a single scandal, this House of Reformers took up the issue of sexual harassment and said, we are going to make rules that do not cost one single person in this process any chance that they'd be robbed of their dignity and respect. We adopted the toughest and strongest ethics rules of any legislature in the nation. We passed the largest property tax cut in state history. We passed common sense reforms to our health insurance plan and our pension plan, reforms that were in the works and took years and years and years to pass. We did it last session. And this House of Reformers passed a transformational educational bill, one for the generation. One that said that parents and students come before bureaucrats and unions. One that said to every single child trapped in a failing school year after year after year, hey, hope is on the way. We are going to take care of you. We drew the line in the appropriations process despite being threatened with a lawsuit and dragged the Senate into a world where every single appropriation is now outside and in the sunshine. We partnered with the governor to end corporate welfare. We have a brand new system of doing economic development, and it's a model for the rest of the world. We used our impeachment power to force the resignation of a judge who was accused of sexist and racist remarks and behavior. We used our oversight power to launch more investigations and institute more lawsuits against waste and graft and corruption than at any point in our state's history. And later this week, we will be the first House of Representatives in the history of the entire state of Florida that uses our power granted to us by the Constitution to enforce our subpoenas. And that phrase, powers granted to us by the Constitution, is the most important. We can never forget. What is it that makes America great? What is it that makes her exceptional? What is it that separates her from every single country in the history of mankind? It is our adherence to a rule of law. What does that mean for us? It means that you cannot be a local tourist development agency and think you have a right to withhold public records from us because you think it might reveal embarrassing information. You can't be the city of Tampa and think you have a right to create an illegal tax simply because you need more money. And you cannot be an elected official who thinks you get to pick and choose what laws you get to obey. Last session, we passed a bill, Representative Metz, that said we will not have a single sanctuary city in our state. The Senate didn't take it up. And now we have politicians who say they want to make the entire state of Florida a sanctuary state, just like California. That's unacceptable. You cannot have politicians who go out there and decide that the rule of law is a multiple choice test, and you simply get to go out there and say none of the above. And let me be very clear here. I'm not being political. This isn't a political statement. This isn't some academic exercise. When politicians abandon the rule of law, when they abuse their power, when they start choosing what laws they'll follow and what laws they will not, there are dire, dire, dire consequences, not only to individuals, but to society as a whole. All you have to do is look at the senseless, tragic death of Kate Steinle to know that the rule of law matters. And I want you to understand where I'm coming from. Principles should always drive our policy. And the rule of law, the principle of the rule of law, whenever it is jeopardized, whenever it is threatened, we should stand up and fight for it. Just take last session. This House of Reformers, finally, after years and years and years, decades, finally apologized for two horrific tragedies. One is the inhumane violence and abuse that occurred at Okeechobee and Dozier School for Boys. And the other one was the criminal disregard for civil and human rights that occurred on the Groveland Four. We can never forget the rule of law. It is our shield that protects us from the demagogues, and it is our sword that we use to fight the corrupt. When I'm watching movies or reading books, I'm always drawn to true stories. And one movie, one of my favorites, was Schindler's List. It talks about a German businessman, very wealthy, who saved over 1,000 Jewish Polish citizens from the Holocaust. And the moving scene's at the end. And he's standing before them, and one of them comes up to him and gives him a gift. He opens it, and it's a ring. And inside the ring, it's engraved. It says, "Whoever saves one life saves the world entire." And it just breaks him. He's broken. He starts gibberishing, and he says, "You don't understand. I'm so wealthy, and I wasted so much money my whole life." He walks over to his car, and he goes, "Look at this fancy car. I could have sold it. It would have been 10 more lives." He takes a gold pin off his suit. He says, "Look at this gold pin. I could have sold it and saved 2 more lives." And there's lots of great messages to come from Schindler's List. But the one I want us to remember is the one that he struggled with. He was racked with the realization that he could do more. And members, we can do so much more. We have to do so much more. And right now, the clock's running. All we have is 55 days. That's all we're guaranteed, every single person in this room. We don't know if there's more after the 55 days or there's another term. And my hope is that when we have in these 55 days, we do more transformational policy, far more than we did last year, to the point that nobody can even believe it was possible. But I will tell you, there's 3 policies that we absolutely must do. First, the Florida House will never support raising taxes on any individual or any business ever. We won't raise them directly. We won't raise them indirectly. We won't passively allow the required local effort to be raised. When we say and insist in law that if you're a local government and you don't go back to the rollback rate, you are raising taxes, it would be the height of hypocrisy for us to do anything otherwise. It is a debate that the Senate seems to want to have. And if they want to have it, we'll have it. We will travel up and down the state because no matter where you go, ask any single individual, any community, any city, any county, and they will tell you it is a tax increase. It's a tax increase anytime government takes more money from you this year than they took last year, and it was on no account of your own. It's a tax increase today on January 9th. It's a tax increase on March 9th. It's a tax increase on June 29th. We have won that fight. We have taken the moral high ground, and we will never give it up. Second, the Florida House will never surrender a single penny of our state's fiscal reserves. Not one single penny. Despite being one of the states hardest hit by the Great Recession, we were recently ranked #1 in the entire nation for financial health. That's an amazing statistic. We're the only large state in the top 20. Texas, Super Texas, 23. California, New York, Pennsylvania, bottom 15. In fact, the only states that are in the top 5 with us are what I call clamp it states. States who had the good fortune to discover oil beneath them. We did it the old-fashioned way. We've cut over $10 billion worth of taxes, 5,000 regulations. We've cut our debt by $7 billion plus. We've put over almost $4 billion into reserves. Not only would it be inexcusable, it would be unforgivable for during this time of prosperity for us to go into our reserves and raid them for pork barrel projects. And finally, we will continue to fight and fight and fight to ensure that every single child, regardless of their race, their gender, their income, or their demographics, is afforded a world-class education. We will continue to have zero tolerance for a system that determines a child's destiny based on their demographics. And I want to tell you a story about Gant Lee. Gant Lee, when he was in the 3rd grade, his parents separated, and his mother relocated with the sole purpose of finding an A-rated school for her son. She put him in the school, and unfortunately, a group of boys targeted him. They started physically assaulting him. They kicked him, they kneed him, they even stabbed him with pencils. Gant and his mother Allison reported it, and nothing was done. Then they started smashing his head against the lockers. Again, they reported it, nothing was done. Finally, they punched him in the jaw, choked him, and started threatening not only him, but his entire family. Altogether, the abuse lasted 3 years. And then Allison, through help of the corporate tax scholarship, was able to get Gant out of the school. and into a good learning environment. He was lucky. Not every child's lucky. And now he's 15 years old. He's in the 10th grade, and he's thriving. And he's here with us today with his mom. Please join me in recognizing Gantley and his mother, Allison, to the Florida House of Representatives. Allison, Gant, on behalf of my colleagues of the Florida House of Representatives, I promise you this: we will end this horror for all children. No one will ever, ever be trapped again. Those are the things that this House of Reformers must do. But we can and we should do much more. But just like last session, you're going to hear from the naysayers who tell you none of this is possible. The status quo, the business as usual crowd will do everything they can to drown out the drumbeat of reform. And just like the famous adage, where fate comes down upon the army and says, you can't do this. You cannot withstand the coming storm. When that happens, and they say that to you, you tell them, you don't understand. This is the House of Representatives. We are the storm. Thank you, and God bless.